This is In the Middle with Josh and Sarah Siders. We get it. You're probably going through something that's asking you to dig deep, think differently, and hold on against the odds.
So these are our thoughts about starting new things, shutting some things down, and being with you, right there in the middle.
Welcome back to In the Middle, the podcast for those of us who haven't arrived yet. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Josh. Thanks again for watching and listening. It's so good to be with you.
So this week's episode features our first sponsor.
Yes, really exciting. Who are we sponsored by?
This week's episode is sponsored by ibuprofen.
That's right. Ibuprofen. Ibuprofen. For those times when you don't exactly know what's wrong, but you need it to go away.
Also good in the case of a potential hangover that, I heard about. I heard people
Who've heard
used
about
it. Yeah. But, of course, do not consume unless you consulted a medical professional. So, yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you to ibuprofen for keeping us going
So,
all those times in midlife.
Wonder pill. So,
It really is. Oh, man. I do rely on it a little bit too much. So speaking of wonder pills that potentially make us happy, let's talk about our topic for today.
yeah. What's our topic?
Well, the topic is happiness, and to be honest,
Yeah.
I would never, like, if someone said, like, okay, let's talk about happiness, maybe like a year ago. Oh, that's so cheesy.
We have to.
Like, I'd be like, yeah, just cheesy. Or what? I didn't think of it as really maybe a valid concept.
Yeah.
But it's weird because I think that it's actually worth visiting.
Yeah.
It's actually worth talking about because you realize that it's like, and maybe another word that I would say that a synonym for it, for those of you who feel hesitant like I do or did, contentment is another thing. It's like a joyful contentment.
Right.
And it's interesting because I think in midlife you find, and this is kind of the heart of what we're saying today, you find you need different things than you thought to be happy. And
Right.
maybe you need less.
Right.
That like what happiness consists of is not what you thought. And it's just really interesting.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we had to achieve celebrity status to find that out.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, I'm just curious, like, have you had a similar journey with happiness? Like I'm saying, yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to talk about it. I would have thought it was a cheesy topic or sort of like superficial.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I'm curious kind of like what your thoughts have been about
Right. So I think I have my initial thought is that our culture is really geared around trying to seek happiness.
Yeah.
Like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Totally.
But
That's so
we've
true.
taken it to be the right to happiness.
Mm.
And what that often means is the avoidance of anything that makes me unhappy. Like I have a right to avoid anything or anyone that makes me unhappy.
Yeah.
And so
That's insightful.
thank you. It's, to me, why it's been so, like you said, maybe superficial to think about happiness
Mm-hmm.
is because we often act in kind of an avoidant unhappiness. And it the things that are, the previous generations went through to achieve success
Yeah.
and joy, even though it might have been in simple ways and simpler times, we kind of take that for granted and avoid those same things
Yeah.
and have kind of created this culture of victimization, self-victimization,
Whoa. Dang.
because it's like that makes me unhappy, or that person annoys me, or
Yeah.
and I deserve to be happy. I have the right to be happy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to avoid all unpleasant things. So I think that's why.
That's crazy. It's like the pursuit of happiness and the right to happiness actually are making us more unhappy
Yeah.
because we're focused on unhappiness or like, oh, get that thing away from me, and the avoidance.
Right. And again, we just think it's our right. It's our right, destiny, God given whatever.
Mm,
And yeah, it's
nice.
like you actually have to work hard for happiness, for contentment, for satisfaction.
Wow.
And it's through struggle.
Mhm.
You know, Kansas had Astra Pressborough, right?
Yes.
To the stars through difficulty.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that
So
entire state of mind.
Yeah.
Because it's like that's how it happens. It's
Mhm.
through the valleys of life you get to appreciate what you have,
Mhm.
what you've accomplished. And so that's my first thought is that it can be superficial because we have a whole culture of avoiding things that are unpleasant because we've had mistaken, the founding of our country based on the right to happiness. And it's just never been promised to us. Jesus said, in this life you
Oh.
will have trouble.
Yeah.
No student is above the master, and the master went through hardship. What do you think the students are going to? It's on and on and on all throughout. And so you just don't appreciate that. So that's my first thought.
Wow.
My second thought is
Yeah.
have been reading Arthur Brooks, From Strength to Strength.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit offline.
Yeah.
He has this simple formula, actually. Satisfaction equals what you have divided by what you want. And so if you think about this, and you think about the pursuit of happiness, the desire to be happy, and I think that's a real human thing, by the way. I'm not trying to discount, from what I said earlier, the desire to be happy. Like, we have that desire.
Yeah.
Joyful, content, sense of success, etc., etc. So, but if you take like the pursuit of happiness and satisfaction in this culture, in this life right now, a lot of times in this kind of affluent, prosperous society that we live in, our wants often outpace what we have. Mm-hmm. And as you go throughout life, as you get more wealth, if you get more things, that will continue to outpace if you're not careful. Mm-hmm. And and it will actually have an adverse effect on happiness. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, one of the things he just says, the Mercedes that we own in our 50s brings less satisfaction than the broken down Chevy we had in our 20s. Mm. Wow. How can that be? Right? But we look back and it's like they're, So we have to be really cautious that what we have isn't outpaced by our wants, because just fractionally, mathematically, that puts us at a fraction, at a deficit, at a fraction. So if it's like, if what you have is a 1 and what you want is a 2, you have a 0.5. Yeah. You have 0.5 happiness.
You're halfway there.
Right?
Yeah.
But if as you get older and hopefully wiser and more mature and more centered, what you want approaches 1, approaches small numbers, approaches 1, let's say, and what you have, you go, actually, what I have is what I need. I have everything I need.
Yes.
And the extra is all bonus. You actually create more happiness because that top number gets larger. So 2 over 1 instead of 1 over 2.
Wow. Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So by focusing on what you have and being grateful for what you have, by being content with what you have, that number gets larger as you're
interesting.
So.
Could we have had this conversation last week when we talked about gratitude?
Yeah, right.
Maybe grumpy, but no, I think that was the right thing to talk about that.
Sure.
But I think that's okay. So to me, defining happiness is important here because you did it in a roundabout way. So you were talking about like, here's our culture. Our culture says that happiness is being undisturbed, having what I want, not having hardship, and sort of just like floating through life kind of bubble wrapped.
Right.
And, and so I should be able to like, buy my way maybe out of something, or negotiate my way out of pain, or, leave a relationship that's causing me pain, or litigate my way out of pain, medicate my way out of pain and hardship. And so I should, like, happiness is the center of the bullseye for me. And the center of that bullseye is like, I'm achieving that through eliminating hardship, like getting away from it, right? Like even employing boundaries, which are good, but employ them kind of recklessly in a way of like, I just want to not be harmed.
Yeah.
I don't want to be hurt, and I don't want to have to face any of that.
Yeah.
And so I think that does tend to be a definition, and I would also place that definition in the first half of life. And I think for like, if you're looking at critical journey stage theory, then you're saying it's stage 1, that childlike stage,
Right.
Stage 2, where you're black and white, stage 3, where you're in achievement and acquisition mode.
Yeah.
You would say that happiness is freedom from pain. I have been able to buy my way out. I have my home. I have this stuff.
Happiness is accomplishment.
Happiness is accomplishment. It's acquisition. It's having a lot. And so, the denominator, to use that formula from Arthur Brooks, would be high. Like, it'd be 50, it'd be 100, it'd be 1,000 at the bottom. But you would be like, well, I'm, rapidly acquiring. So you would have this sense of like, even though the number on the bottom of my denominator of like what I want is always going up, you're able in those stages to like acquire.
Yeah.
And so it feels like the culture is giving you something that's like, I can see how that would work. Okay. Yeah. But then when you get into the middle of your life, when things start to shift, when the buttons don't work, when the formulas break down, I've had so many conversations as in you with men and women who have gone through this. And it's like, oh, I can't rely on this ever increasing numerator and denominator.
Right.
Like where I can always have more of what I want. I can always increase my wants and have more of what I want. I actually have to sit with the fact that all of a sudden the things that I want aren't there.
Yeah.
And I'm grieving that.
Right.
I'm grieving my inability to acquire those things.
Right.
And then, because you're in that grief, you're in that anger, you're not grateful at that point. And so you're just wrestling with that. And so I think that's where you can, if you keep going, if you stay at the wall, if you stay in that discomfort, you are invited into that, through that, into that place of, oh, but what do I have?
Right.
And then you start to go, oh, I have one thing, I have two things, and I'm actually grateful for those things. I appreciate those things. Those are what I want, and actually now I'm happy.
Yeah.
And it's like your 30-year-old self would like be shocked.
And to your point, if happiness and contentment isn't about stuffing as many things in that denominator as you can, it is actually quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Not only being grateful about what you do have, it's about unburdening yourself with the things that it's actually wanting less. It's actually wanting the right things that bring meaning and purpose to you. So it's not like a Buddhist, like, get rid of all desire. Yeah. It's actually desire the right things. Right?
Intentional desire.
Yeah. So I think that's really helpful for me as I think about that. It's not just about acquiring life being up instead of right. Because, and I'll be honest, that formula in and of itself has a lot of privilege.
Dude.
You have to be a certain,
so true.
That sense of happiness works for a certain demographic that has a certain revenue stream, cash flow dollar amount comes in. Right? It doesn't work for everybody, and yet that is what the American dream, should I say, really does sell us. Yeah, and it's I think we have to just consider stark reality of like at some point that breaks down. Yeah, and we just need to catch up to that reality, and we'll all be a lot happier.
Yeah, that's good. You're talking about that. It's reminding me, like, if there is true happiness to be found on the other side of this adversity, it's like, well, shoot. I mean, who knew that better than people who left oppressive governments and were willing to, at the start of America, the idea of America, the experiment of America was, hey, we want to pursue happiness, and no one was under the impression that it was easy. Like, there's a war here, there's hardship, it's freezing cold, we don't have all our creature comforts. I mean, they were like embracing adversity in the middle of writing down the pursuit of happiness. And I think that, they weren't a capitalist society, right? I mean, maybe what was it, Adam Smith, like writing his things on
That's more
around
the
that
term
same
I'm
time.
familiar with, yeah.
Yeah, but like in terms of like we go, okay, America is capitalist and is contributing to this like rampant consumerism, blah blah blah. It's like, well, okay, but that's probably how we've become have come to interpret happiness through the lens of capitalism and acquisition.
Right.
I don't think that was even the original intent when we say that. So I think that's something that we need to be like, oh, maybe like the ancient way of understanding happiness. Like if we're going to look at Ignatius, if we're going to look at Augustine, if we're going to look at, I don't know, Greek philosophers. You can tell me about the Stoic perspective. But yeah, I'm just, it's like, I think people always throughout history have thought that happiness had more depth to it. And then somehow it became something more superficial. I remember hearing lots of parents, like, our generation's parents, and I guess boomers typically, would say, I just want my kids to be happy. And I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, and is it your definition of happiness or theirs?
Right.
And if they're not happy for a little while on the way to being happy, is that good? And if they do something that makes them happy that you don't like, is that okay? And if they do something that makes them happy now and it destroys their life, is that what you meant?
Yeah.
What do we mean?
Right. Yeah,
I feel like defining things is so important. But I think that like the dream of it just feels like it's all tied to this, like, we're going to be happy, you're going to like your job, you're going to make enough money to retire at 65 and you'll live off the rest of your life. And it's like, is that what we mean? And
let me then ask you, let me take a step back and ask you. You have someone come to you for coaching, therapy, or just life wisdom. What would you tell them? You mostly work with women. What would you tell
I do.
her?
Yeah.
I'm just not happy having fun.
Wow.
What do I need to be happy?
Yeah. I would ask them, like, what do you mean by happiness?
Yeah.
What are you looking for? Because I think that's the thing that you were talking about. What are the things, like the denominator, things that you desire become less, right? So if someone's like, I'm unhappy, it would be like, okay, well, where are you at in your life, right? Like, which stage are you in? I would assess through that lens a little bit. And then it would be like, okay, are you just like young and restless? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you want more for your life. Like, you're in acquisition mode. Or are you like in grief? Are you like, oh, it's not working, things are hard, and I just don't understand, and I need to like give my grief some attention and move into gratitude.
Yeah.
How do you know what you want? And I think, like, I would say, I would just help them like name that. And most of the time, the things that people want are so simple.
Yeah.
Like, I want to like have my people.
Yeah.
I want relationships that are strong. I want to feel like I belong. Like I'm wanted.
Yeah.
And I want to do meaningful work in the world.
That's right.
Meaningful relationships, meaningful work. I remember like writing that down in a book that I was writing like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like, what do people really want?
Yeah.
Meaningful relationships, meaningful work. I don't know. And, in the comments or, however you want to contact us, you're welcome to say, oh, I want this or that. But I think when it comes down to it, like deep in our soul, when we think about like the eulogy values, we're like, I want to do something that makes an impact in my life. People at a eulogy would say that happened. That I did that they missed me, that I meant something to them, that my life mattered. And my life matters because of the intersection of the work and the people.
Yeah.
And so when we don't have that, I think we're not happy. And I think that shockingly, when we do have that, we are happy.
Yeah.
And the story that I'll be telling when I share this on my Substack is like this year. This year has been really weird. It has been full of, I thought this was going to happen and then something else happened.
Yeah.
Like, so a lot of like switches, a lot of like setbacks or perceived setbacks, things that like I thought were going to play out at a certain speed in a certain way, didn't go that way. And I've been very disoriented and frustrated and even like grumpy about it at times, and sometimes just like really surprised at just how like powerless I felt or frustrated,
Yeah.
confused. Like, yeah, it's been a weird year. It's been
Yeah.
super weird. And so, I had a friend pass away this fall, and it was very much like coming to face with. She was a childhood friend, high
Yeah.
school, college, early professional. We were all at each other's weddings. Like, it was crazy. And it was like, oh, wow. Here we are, with three of us. We all are 42, 43, and she's not here anymore. And like, I don't know. It was just really, it was weird. It was a lot. And so I'm sitting there a couple weeks after this, and it's my birthday, and I'm asking myself, I don't know what even made me do it, because it felt so risky. But I said to myself, are you happy? And I was shocked that I was like, yes.
Mm.
And it's like, who are you asking? And I started
Right.
to realize, like, oh,
Right.
I'm asking my heart. I'm asking the center of my emotions.
Yeah.
And your emotions are so much about, like, are my needs met,
Right. Right.
Because emotions are expressions of need. And so your heart is kind of like saying, like, are you good? And I was like, oh, my heart was like, yes, I'm happy. And I'm like, how? Like, everything is crazy. Everything's weird. Like, and it's like, no, everything isn't that crazy. Like, I have extraordinary friendships
Yeah.
that have stood the test of time, decades. I have my relationship with you, which
Yeah.
is great. And
Yeah.
it just gets better,
Yeah.
like, honestly.
Yeah.
And, like, we just work things out.
Yeah.
See the growth mindset episode if you want to know our approach to relationships.
Okay.
But yeah, like, that has been really great. Like, I love the kids, and it's like, it's challenging to like engage them and help them grow, but like, it's good. And I love our beautiful community that we have, our church, and
Right.
and I'm doing meaningful work, even though my business is like, I love so many things about it. It's going at a different
Yeah.
speed than I
Right.
expected, but I love like working at my clinic and Healing
Yeah.
House with the other providers. So many things are great, and it's like, oh, my heart knows to be grateful. My
That's
heart
good.
knows
Yeah.
that everything is there that I need. It's amazing.
So I have a question then. How would you recommend people take their own temperature? Like, how would they do
Whoa.
a heart check
Wow.
to go, am I happy or am I not? Because if you look to our surroundings to tell us, if you look at your job, if you look at the world, a lot of that's going to tell you you shouldn't be happy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But what we're finding out is, like, happiness transcends that. It's meaningful work, meaningful ambitions.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about the quantity of things that you have,
Yeah.
or a quantity of experiences you've experienced.
Yeah.
So,
That's
how would
interesting.
you say, like, how would you walk someone through checking in with themselves like you did?
I mean, I didn't realize that I was even that tuned in to that part of myself, to be honest. Our friend who I read on too, we're going to have in the podcast at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
He and I have had many conversations about this. You need to connect more to your heart. And I was like,
Huh.
I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm mad about that. Like, because, I'm, I don't know. I'm a vulnerability avoidant as an 8. Enneagram 8, if you're familiar with that and you're listening. And so that's a really common thing for an 8 to just be like, I don't want to talk about feelings, which is hilarious for a therapist. But there's plenty of 8 therapists. There's plenty of us. But I just didn't know. And so I was actually surprised that I had such a connection with that part of myself. I was like, whoa, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think there's 3 ways to do it. 3 ways to kind of assess. And they're just pretty straightforward. The one that a lot of life coaches use, you can Google this. I've used this a lot with clients, and it's called the Wheel of Life. It assesses anywhere from 6 to 8 different characteristics in your life. So it's going to look at your physical health, your mental health, your potentially your finances and or your business, your relationships, like your friends and or partners, family. So, kind of like several different characteristics. Your spirituality, that's a thing for you. And so what you do is you use this wheel and you kind of like color in, however much of each little section. It's kind of like a pizza, right?
Okay.
Like it's
Yeah.
like a circle at a pizza, and it's like, okay, if you are at like an 8 or a 10 in your body and your physical health, but you're like at a 3 in
Right.
your family relationships, then you would color in like this,
Right.
and you would see
Right.
that this wheel is uneven.
Yeah.
You have one thing
Right.
that's strong, and so
It's
you're
like
like, oh,
a
I can help.
spidergram or a webgram or something
Maybe
like
I've never
that.
heard of those,
It's like
but yeah,
how build that how
well-rounded.
yeah.
Yeah,
But it's not. It's like dips and goes, I know what you're
yeah.
talking about.
So it's an interesting, like it's a great tool, and like literally you can just find
Yeah.
graphics of them and make your own. If you're like, okay, let me just assess my life, and it is like I would say pretty comprehensive, and so it's great for the coaching relationship.
Yeah.
Something that's even more simplified that I like that covers all those three or those 8 is the mind, body, soul, or biopsychosocial model,
Okay.
which is it's your mind, your self-talk, the meaning that you have, the meaning that you're making of things, and that intersects. The mind and soul intersects because soul is relationships,
Yeah.
relationship to self, God, others, and so there's an emotional part that you might say like the heart, but the heart, soul and mind kind of intersect there. And so I mentioned like asking my heart,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's like, well, that's not part of the biopsychosocial like mind, body, soul, but like I think it kind of shows up,
Right.
in there.
Interesting.
And so, mind, body, soul, and then, how's my body? Like,
Right.
how's my physical health? How's my sleep? How's my nutrition? So you're looking at those 3 things. But if you want the simplest thing,
Yes.
like, which is kind of like the one that I was saying is like
Okay.
meaningful work, meaningful relationships. You want to have your health. This
Right.
is why I think the body is so important. You live in your
Right.
body. You might like have a horrible terminal, stage 4 cancer diagnosis. Your family loves you. You're doing incredible work, but you're like sick. You're so sick.
Yeah.
Then you're going to be like, that's not great.
So I think that brings up a good point, and we probably need to start as a plane just flew over, kind of like landing the plane a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
What's interesting to me is that people that are going through or have gone through like terrible life altering things, like cancer diagnoses, things like that. What happens to them internally as they consider that in the life? Time after time, you hear story after story. Not all the time, but a lot of times, people tend to like start whittling down their list of like, here's what I need to have, right?
Yep.
And they just get really grateful.
Yeah.
And they go really deep with whatever time they've got. And the friendships and relationships that they have. And I think it's just times like those that teaches all of us, you just don't need as much as you thought you did.
Yeah.
You don't need,
exactly.
your resume list of all the things.
Mm-hmm.
It's the eulogy. It's the what do you want people to say about you, and then how do you work backwards from that?
Yeah.
And so I think we should be reminded of that.
Yeah.
What that has to teach us.
Wow. Yeah.
And
That is so true. Right. Because you're like, oh, faced with that deadline, you do immediately reprioritize.
Right.
Yeah.
You reprioritize for what's important. What's most important.
Mm-hmm.
And you really, and you do things that make you happy.
Yeah, it's good.
So
It's good.
with that,
lots
lots of like mentions of resources and things in there. If you have any questions or any thoughts, be sure to reach out to us, drop a comment, share a link, of things that you found. So with that, I'm curious, what are you watching, reading, or listening to, and what's saving your butt right now?
Still reading the Internal Family Systems, just kind of digging into that deeper. Also, just got done reading an interview of Wired with Tim Cook. Just interesting looking at Apple, like where it's been, where it's going. And just like the second stage CEOs are always really fascinating. With these big tech companies, the personas of the second stage CEO. I'm always like, you guys are all like a thing. You're like the same. So interesting. Anyways, but yeah, super fascinating to see what they're up to. What's saving my butt is like the indoor workout. It's been cold. I don't love it, but I have been pretty consistent with getting down using the treadmill.
Yeah.
And getting my heart rate up and getting my steps in, and just like honestly, most winters I like fall off the wagon.
Yeah. And
I can tell my body is like, no, I need movement. And so I've been just really grateful to have that. So thanks for getting that all those years ago.
Absolutely.
What a great investment.
It has been.
It's been really nice, yeah. So that's saving my butt. What about you?
Yeah, for me, I am. Oh, John and I the other night watched Die Hard 2. So about a year ago, we went. The theater had Die Hard playing. Yeah. $5 matinee, whatever. So I took him.
So fun. As
you kind of do, try and do this weekly, like hang out, watch a man movie, have good conversations, eat meat, that sort of thing. Yeah. So a couple of months ago, he goes, "Dad, you didn't tell me there's a sequel to Die Hard. Why haven't we watched it?" I said, "Oh, buddy, there's like 4 sequels to Die Hard."
Bruce Willis.
Yeah. So we watched Die Hard 2. Lots of F-bombs.
Yes, so many.
But some good, just 1990s action.
Solid action flick.
Yeah. He saves it on court.
We are so going to watch Die Hard, the original Christmas movie.
Yes, we
this year when we wrap our presents, as we do. Traditions.
It's good.
That's a good one.
And then what's saving my butt right now? I would say my daily routines.
Nice.
Saving my butt. So I have some baked in routines I've done for years. Got off of them, a couple weeks ago. Just thought, okay, I don't need, it's like I have some vitamins I take, other supplements and mineral, creatine, ashwagandha, amazing greens, like some fiber, grass stuff, and let some of that lapse, and I was feeling it. I was hard up, and I didn't put it together.
Wow.
And it's just those simple things of like the stacking of those little micro habits that holistically I'm like, it just helps you feel good. Yeah. And then on top of that, like it's kind of that domino effect. Like I get to the gym easier, and I have good gym times and time in the sauna, and it all just holistically, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's all connected.
It totally is.
So that's what's saving my butt.
Okay, we got to make sure that ashwagandha, amazing greens,
that's it.
Supplements are on like subscribe and save,
that's
right? Drop that off every month.
It up, show up at the door.
Yeah, let's not play around with that, man.
Right.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, way to go.
Yeah, you too. You too. Keep it up.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right. Thanks again, Ibuprofen, for sponsoring us. And thanks to you all for watching and listening. We're so glad to be in your life.
Yeah, we'll see you back here next week for more of In the Middle.
This is the In the Middle podcast with Josh and Sarah Siders. Visit inthemiddlecoaching.co for other resources, courses, and helpful tools.